My name is Jess. I'm a photographer, I'm an activist, I'm a dreamer, and I'm also a trans person. Like when I first came out as being trans and realizing that there was something else going on with my gender, I really sort of jumped to the other extreme and wanted to be perceived as male. I felt very much like when I went out in the world I wanted to be seen as male, and I was trying to figure out where I felt the most comfortable. And I think as time went on and I got more comfortable with my own identity, I became okay being perceived more as me on an individual level, and I became okay with being perceived as having a female body but having this very masculine gender presentation. And that's sort of the space that I'm in now. Well, I think when I first got into photography in a more formal way, I was about 16, 17, finishing up high school, and one of my first projects was photographing genderqueer people. And I think that at that time, I found photography right at a time when I was figuring out my own identity, and I very much investigated who I was by making photographs of other people. So one of my first major projects was photographing people within the transgender and gender variant community, but long before it became a project, it was something that I started. I took a picture of myself with my mom 2 weeks after I'd had chest surgery, and that was sort of the first image I made along this journey. And at the time I was just photographing myself. I was trying to make sense of my surgery, I was trying to make sense of my identity. It was very much me finding out who I was and coming to terms with who I was very intertwined with the photographs that I was making. And I think after a certain point I began to feel more and more resolved in who I was, and the work began to be less and less about me. And I became more interested in other trans people and other people with gender variant stories and experiences. But I think that my photography has always been the way in which I figure out who I am in relationship to the world, whether that's about gender, whether it's about another form of identity. It's the way that I deal with whatever I'm dealing with in my personal life. It filters through with my work. The project that I'm working on right now in my own work is documenting a small sustainable fiber farm in Western Massachusetts, and I'm really interested in that culture. I'm interested in people who are farmers. I'm interested in sustainable food, and for me it's really interesting because who I am as a trans person affects all of the work I make. Who I am as a queer person affects the work that I make, but it's not all that I do. It's not all that I am. I have many more interests, and I'm much more complicated than just focusing on gender or just being trans. For me, I really feel that I most strongly identify with who I am as a photographer and who I am as an artist. And who I am as a trans person and the road that I've taken to get to where I am really affects the work that I make and how I move through the world and the people that I meet and how I interact with them. But I think at the end of the day, what I'm really passionate about is connecting with other people and learning about their experience and validating their experience, whether they're queer or straight or in the city or farmers or whatever their particular hobby or passion or life is, that I want to connect with them and represent them as they want to be seen, and just show that as something that's wonderful and valid, and that there's a place for everybody, whatever you are, that's a really valid experience. And that's what I'm really passionate about as a photographer, which I think also parallels how I feel about gender. Like, I feel like there is a place for everybody.